The night was quiet, almost too quiet, as the human walked down the empty street with a small paper bag in his hand. The city had already gone dark, shops closed, lights dimmed, and only the buzzing street lamps stood like tired guards on each corner. His steps echoed against the cracked pavement, reminding him that he was alone again. He had stayed late at work, cleaning floors in a large office where no one remembered his name. His reward for the long day was a few leftover pieces of bread, some half-eaten stew, and a few scraps packed into the bag. It wasn't much, but it was enough to stop his stomach from growling through the night. He thought he was the only soul walking that forgotten road, but then he heard it. A voice, faint and trembling, almost carried away by the wind. "Can we have your leftovers?" The human stopped, his heart jumping as if struck. He turned his head quickly, scanning the street. The sound was so soft, so desperate, he wondered if he had imagined it. For a long moment, he stood frozen, gripping the bag tightly. Then it came, again, weaker this time, yet filled with hunger. "Please, your leftovers." The human's eyes narrowed. The voice came from the alley on his right, a place of shadows where even the street lamps refused to shine. He hesitated. His mind whispered warnings. This could be a trap. Maybe thieves waited in the dark. Maybe someone wanted his small bag of food, but there was something different about the voice. It wasn't sharp or threatening, it was broken, almost like the cry of a child. His chest tightened as he took one cautious step toward the alley, then another. The alley smelled of damp stone and rusting pipes. Trash bins leaned against the walls, spilling scraps that even rats had stopped chewing. The human moved slowly, his boots scraping against the wet ground. His hand tightened around the bag, ready to run if danger appeared. Then he saw them, two small figures crouched behind a broken crate. Their eyes glowed faintly in the dark, reflecting the dim light like twin moons, their thin arms wrapped around each other, their faces pale and drawn with hunger. They were alien girls, no older than 12 or 13 by human guess. Their hair tangled, their clothes torn, their skin marked with dust and bruises. The humans. Breath caught in his throat. He had heard of aliens in this part of the city, abandoned, ignored, left to survive in silence. Most people walked past them, pretending they did not exist, but now, two of them sat before him, not with anger, not with violence, but with eyes full of fear and empty stomachs that begged louder than their voices ever could. "Can we, please?" one whispered again, her voice breaking halfway. The human stood still, his mind spinning. This was not what he expected. He thought of the stories he had heard, about thieves, about tricksters, about gangs, but all he saw now were two starving children. He looked down at his bag, the bread inside, the small stew, the scraps meant for his own dinner. His stomach gave a low growl, reminding him that he too was hungry. For a moment he felt torn. Should he keep the food for himself, or should he give it away? Would these children even survive the night without something to eat? The girls looked at him with wide, glowing eyes that held both fear and hope. They did not move closer, as if afraid he would strike them for daring to ask. Instead, they waited in silence, trembling in the cold night. The human took a deep breath. His heart ached in a way he had not felt for years. Slowly, carefully, he reached into the bag. He pulled out the smallest piece of bread and held it toward them. The girls gasped, their eyes widening. They looked at each other, then back at him. One of them crawled forward on shaky hands and knees. She took the bread gently, as if afraid it would disappear, and bit into it with desperate hunger. The other girl watched, her lips trembling, until the human handed her a piece as well. They ate fast, too fast, their bodies shaking as they swallowed every crumb. The human stood there, watching them, the sound of their chewing filling the empty alley. For the first time that night, the silence was broken not by loneliness, but by the fragile sound of survival. And deep inside, the human felt something he could not name yet, something that told him this meeting was only the beginning. The human did not move for a long time. He stood there in the damp alley, holding the bag close to his chest while the two alien girls tore into the small pieces of bread he had given them. The sound of their hurried chewing echoed against the stone walls, sharp and raw as if silence itself had been broken by their hunger. When the bread was gone, the smaller girl licked her fingers. Her eyes darted to the bag in his hand, not with boldness but with quiet desperation. The older one touched her sister's arm and shook her head. She whispered something in her own alien tongue, her voice soft like a broken song. The younger one nodded quickly, though her glowing eyes still lingered on the food. The human's heart twisted. He had seen hunger before. Men at the docks who worked for coins too small to buy a meal, children, in human slums begging with empty bowls. But this was different. This was not just hunger in the stomach. It was hunger in the bones, hunger that had lived with them for days, maybe weeks. He lowered himself slowly, crouching to their level. The two girls tensed, their thin bodies trembling, as if expecting a strike. The human raised his free hand, palm open, showing he meant no harm. "It's all right," he said quietly. "I won't hurt you." The words seemed strange in the cold alley, but the younger one's shoulders loosened slightly. She blinked up at him, crumbs stuck on her lips. Her voice was weak when she spoke. "More, please." The human hesitated. His stomach growled again, reminding him of his own hunger. But when he looked at the two of them, huddled together like frightened animals, he felt the weight of choice pressing hard on him. He could walk away, keep his food, pretend this never happened, but their hollow eyes burned into him, eyes that told stories no child should ever carry. With a sigh, he opened the bag. He pulled out a piece of flatbread and handed it to them. The older girl reached for it, but before she touched it, she froze. Her gaze locked on his hand. Her eyes widened, and for a moment she looked afraid. The human frowned, glancing at his palm. It was only a scar, a faint mark from years of hard labor. Yet the girl stared at it as though it reminded her of something darker. He lowered the bread to her gently. She snatched it at last, retreating back to her sister. They shared it, between them, breaking each bite into small pieces, chewing slowly this time as if to make it last longer. The younger girl smiled faintly, though her lips trembled from cold. She whispered something in their alien tongue again, and the older one answered softly. A sound like relief, fragile and small, filled the space between them. The human sat back, on his heels watching, his chest tightened again. He remembered his own little sister, long gone now, who used to laugh while sneaking food from his plate when they were children. The memory stung, but it also warmed him. He wondered how many nights these alien girls had gone without even a scrap. He spoke carefully. "Where are your parents?" The question hung in the air, heavy and sharp. The girls froze mid-bite. The younger one's eyes fell to the ground, her shoulders curling inward. The older one swallowed hard, then shook her head. "Gone," she whispered in broken human tongue. Just one word, but enough to carry sorrow deeper than the night. The human's throat tightened. He did not ask again. He knew that look. He had seen it in orphans, in children who had lost everything to war or greed. He understood that sometimes silence was the only answer left. The older girl tried to sit straighter, as if wanting to be strong for her sister, but her arms trembled, her legs thin like sticks that could not hold weight for long. The younger leaned against her, eyelids heavy but still watching the bag in the human's hand. He reached inside once more, pulling out the small container of stew. The smell drifted into the air, rich, warm, carrying a hint of spice. The girls' heads snapped up, their glowing eyes wide. They stared as if the food was a miracle, something they thought no longer existed for them. The human hesitated. He had saved this stew for himself. He knew it was the only warm food he had tonight. But looking at them, shivering and frail, his resolve broke. With slow care, he set the container down in front of them. They hesitated, almost unbelieving. Then the younger girl reached first, dipping her fingers inside. She tasted it, her body shivering as if warmth had spread through her veins. She handed it quickly to her sister, who ate with trembling hands. Each bite brought color back into their pale faces. Each swallow sounded like life itself returning. The human watched, his stomach aching from emptiness but his heart aching even more from something else, something he had not felt in years. He saw them eating, and for a moment, it felt like family. The older girl looked up at him, her lips stained with stew. Her voice was quiet but clear. "Thank you." 2 words, broken but honest, filled with more meaning than he thought possible. The human nodded, though he could not find his voice. He sat in the shadows of the alley, his bag now nearly empty, but the weight on his chest somehow lighter. He realized then that this night was changing, that these 2 children, with their hunger and their eyes full of sorrow, had just pulled him into a story he could no longer walk away from. And as the wind howled through the narrow street, the human felt it. This was only the beginning. The human sat on the damp ground of the alley, his back against the cold brick wall. The small container of stew was nearly empty now, the girls scraping the last drops with their fingers. Their glowing eyes shone brighter than before, not from strength, but from the fragile hope that food had given them. For a long time none of them spoke. Only the sound of chewing, soft and quick, filled the space. The human's stomach growled, loud and painful, reminding him of his own hunger. He ignored it, choosing instead to watch the way the younger girl smiled faintly at her sister, as though even a small bite of warmth had given her life again. When the food was finally gone, the younger girl licked her fingers, then whispered something in her alien tongue. Her voice was soft, almost a song. The older sister answered, brushing dirt away from her sibling's cheek with a trembling hand. It was a simple act, but it carried love so deep the human felt his throat tighten. He lowered the empty container and wiped his hands on his trousers. He wanted to say something, but words felt too small. These 2 children, fragile and scared, had eaten his food as if it was more than scraps. It was a treasure. The older girl looked at him with guarded eyes, still suspicious but no longer as afraid. She shifted her sister behind her as though to protect her. Her voice was quiet, broken but clear. "Why? Give to us." The human paused. He had asked himself the same thing. Why had he given away the only warm meal he had? Why had he chosen them over himself? He thought of his sister again, the one he had lost years ago, and felt a hollow ache in his chest. He answered softly, "Because you were hungry." The words sounded simple, yet the older girl blinked as though they were foreign to her. Her lips parted as if she could not understand kindness given without a price. She whispered to her sister, the alien words rolling like water. The younger girl's glowing eyes turned to him again, wider this time, filled with something close, to trust. The human reached into his bag one last time, pulling out the final piece of bread. It was small, almost nothing, but when he broke it into 2 halves and handed it over, the girls accepted it with shaking hands. They ate slowly now, as if learning to savor the gift instead of rushing against hunger. He stayed sitting with them under the flickering alley light. His body was tired, his stomach empty, yet something inside him felt alive. For the first time in years, he was not eating alone. For the first time, he felt a strange warmth, the kind that comes not from food, but from being needed. The younger girl leaned against her sister, chewing, slowly. Her small smile appeared again, a smile so faint yet so honest it cut through the night like light through shadow. She looked up at him and whispered, "Family." The human's heart stopped for a moment. The words struck him deep, heavier than anything he expected. Did she mean him? Did she truly see him? A stranger as family? He did not answer right away. He only looked at the 2 of them, fragile, hungry, yet clinging to each other with a bond so strong it reminded him of everything he once lost. He swallowed hard, his throat dry. The night grew colder, wind sweeping through the alley. The girls shivered, curling closer to each other. The human noticed how thin their clothes were, how their small hands trembled not only from hunger, but from cold and exhaustion. He shrugged off his old work jacket, rough and patched, and placed it over their shoulders. They gasped softly, as if the jacket itself was another miracle. The older girl pulled it around her sister first, then herself. Their glowing eyes lifted. To him, shining brighter now. The younger one whispered warm, and the older added a quiet thank you in her broken human tongue. The human nodded, though he felt a strange lump in his chest. He was just a janitor, a man forgotten by most, but here, in this dark alley, 2 starving alien children looked at him as if he had given them the world. Minutes passed in silence, only the sound of distant thunder rolling through the sky. The rain had not yet begun, but the air carried the heavy scent of it. The human knew he could not leave them here, not in the cold, not with soldiers roaming the streets. Yet he also knew taking them home would change everything. The older girl's eyes never left his face, as if she was waiting for him to decide. She sat straighter, trying to look braver than she was. Her sister dozed lightly against her side, breathing steady for the first time in days. The human rubbed his hands together, fighting the chill. His mind raced. He could still walk away, pretend this never happened. But when he looked at them again, wrapped in his jacket, sitting close like 2 flickering candles in the dark, he knew the truth. He could not walk away. For the first time in a long while, he spoke with steady voice. You are not alone now. The older girl tilted her head, not fully understanding but sensing the weight of his tone. The younger stirred, half asleep, and whispered that same word again. Family. And in that moment, under the broken alley light and the rising wind, the human felt something he thought he had lost forever. The pain of his own loneliness eased, replaced by a fragile thread of connection. It was only a meal, only scraps of bread and stew, but it felt like something greater. It felt like the beginning of family. The rain finally began to fall, soft at first, then harder, tapping against the tin roofs and dripping from the broken gutters above the alley. The human shifted closer to the wall to keep dry, but the girls did not move. They huddled under his jacket, eyes half closed, clutching each other as though letting go would mean the world would swallow them whole. For a while, the human only listened. The sound of rain filled the silence, and he thought maybe they would sleep at last. But the older girl opened her eyes, her gaze fixed on him, sharp yet fragile. She studied his face like she was searching. For an answer hidden in his features, the human cleared his throat. What happened to you? He asked softly. The question hung heavy in the damp air. The younger girl stirred but stayed quiet, pressing her face into her sister's arm. The older girl looked away, her glowing eyes reflecting the wet stones. She did not answer at first, her lips trembling as if the words were locked behind fear. Finally, she whispered, her voice broken. We ran. The human leaned forward, his brows furrowed. Ran? From where? The girl swallowed hard. Her thin fingers gripped the jacket tighter. Camp, she said slowly, struggling with the human tongue. Work camp. The word sent a chill through him. He had heard rumors, stories spoken in whispers about labor camps outside the city, places where aliens, especially children, were forced to toil, digging, lifting, building, until their small bodies broke. Most humans ignored those stories. Some laughed them off, saying aliens deserved no better. But now here they were, proof sitting in front of him, shivering in the rain. The human's chest burned with anger. He kept his voice calm for their sake. How long have you been out? The older girl glanced at her sister, who had drifted into uneasy sleep. She lowered her voice. Weeks? Maybe. She frowned, searching for the right word. Hiding. Hungry. Always running. She lifted her arm slightly. The sleeve slid back and the human saw it. Dark lines on her skin. Marks like scars or burns. He reached forward, but she pulled back quickly, covering it again. Her eyes widened in fear, and his heart twisted. He raised his hands slowly, palms open. It's all right, he said. I won't touch. She studied him again, suspicious, but not hateful. Her glowing eyes softened after a moment. Her voice dropped to a whisper. Guards hunt us. The human clenched his fists. his mind filled with images. Children chased through alleys, caught and dragged back, beaten for daring to escape. He knew she was telling the truth. The city. Guards often made rounds, and everyone knew what that really meant. He exhaled slowly, trying to steady his thoughts. "You're safe for now," he said, though he wasn't sure if it was true. His eyes shifted toward the alley's entrance where the rain poured down like a curtain. Any moment, boots could echo on the stones, voices could shout, lights could sweep the shadows. The girl hugged her sister closer. Her voice trembled but held a spark of defiance. "No, go back." The human nodded firmly. "You won't." For a moment, their eyes locked. In hers, he saw pain, fear, but also a fragile flame of will. The same will he had seen in fighters who refused to bow. It stirred something deep inside. Him, something he thought had died long ago. The younger girl whimpered in her sleep, whispering words in her alien tongue. The older soothed her gently, rocking her like a mother would. The human watched, his chest heavy. These girls had no parents, no safety, and yet they clung to each other, keeping hope alive with nothing but love. His jaw tightened. He thought of his small room at the edge of the city, a place barely big enough for him. He thought of the guards, of the risk, of what would happen if someone discovered he had taken in alien runaways. Yet the choice was clear, clearer than anything in his life. He leaned closer, speaking low so only she could hear. "I will help you." The girl blinked, as if she could not believe him. Why? The question pierced him. Why indeed he had little himself, no wealth, no power, nothing to gain. Yet he saw her eyes, the way they held onto a thin thread of hope even after everything. He thought of his sister again, gone too soon, and the ache in his chest turned into resolve because no one else will. He answered, his voice steady. The girl stared at him, her lips parting slightly. Her eyes shimmered in the dim light, not with tears, but with something else, something close to trust. The rain outside grew louder, masking the distant sound of voices. The human tensed, his ears catching the rhythm of boots splashing through puddles. He looked sharply toward the mouth of the alley. The girl noticed too, her body stiffening. She clutched her sister tighter, pulling her back into the shadows. "Stay quiet," the human whispered. The sound of boots drew nearer, heavy and sure. A beam of light cut across the street, sweeping the whetstones. The human pressed against the wall, his body shielding the girls as much as he could. The patrol moved slowly, searching, listening. For a breathless moment, the world shrank to the sound of rain and pounding hearts. Then the voices faded, the boots moved past, the light swept away. The alley sank back into darkness. The human exhaled, his shoulders sinking in relief. The girls trembled under his jacket, their glowing eyes wide with fear. He touched the wall beside him. Grounding himself, he knew this was not the end. The guards would return, and next time they might not pass by so easily. He looked at the girls, both of them fragile, yet holding on to life with all they had, and his decision hardened. He could not leave them here, not after knowing the truth of where they came from, not after seeing the shadows of their past written in scars and fear. The human had stepped into their story by chance, but now it was his story too. And he swore silently as thunder rumbled over the city that he would not let the past take them again. The rain came harder now, pouring down the alley in streams that carried dirt and scraps into the gutters. The human stood with his back to the wall, his jacket gone, his shirt soaked through. The two alien girls clung to each other under the jacket he had given them, their small bodies trembling not only from cold, but from fear. The sound of boots returned louder this time, marching in rhythm. Voices shouted through the storm, rough and sharp. The human knew instantly. They were searching. The patrol hadn't just been passing by, they were hunting. "Stay close," he whispered, his voice low and firm. The older girl nodded quickly, pulling her sister tighter. Her glowing eyes darted toward the mouth of the alley where shadows moved against the rain. The human looked around. His mind raced. He spotted an old shed at the far end of the alley, its door half broken, rust creeping. Up its frame, it wasn't safe, but it was shelter. He grabbed the younger girl's hand gently. Motioning for them to follow, they ran quietly, their footsteps drowned out by the storm. Water splashed around their ankles. The human pushed the shed door open with his shoulder, the wood groaning loudly. For a moment, he feared the sound would give them away, but thunder cracked above, covering it. Inside, the shed was dark and smelled of mold and rust. Broken tools lay scattered on the ground, and the roof leaked in places. But it was enough. He pulled the door closed and crouched. Low, motioning for silence, the girls huddled beside him, their breaths fast and shallow. The older one wrapped her arms around her sister, both of them shaking. The human put a finger to his lips, listening. The boots grew closer, splashing through puddles. A beam of light swept across the alley outside, piercing through cracks in the shed wall. The human froze, pressing his body against the girls to keep them hidden in shadow. The younger one whimpered softly, and he whispered, "Shh. It's all right. Stay quiet." Through the gaps in the wood he saw them. 3 soldiers armored in dark uniforms, their helmets glowing faintly with scanners. One carried a long rifle. Another held a light, sweeping it across the alley again and again. "They're here," one of them barked, his voice rough. "Tracks lead this way." The human's heart pounded. He glanced down at the girls, their wide eyes filled with terror. He knew if they were found, there would be no mercy. The soldiers moved closer. One kicked over a trash bin, metal clanging against the wet stones. Another shone his light along the walls. The beam grew brighter as it neared the shed. The human held his breath. He wrapped an arm around the girls, pulling them close to his chest. His heart beat so loud, he thought the soldiers might hear it. The light stopped just short of the shed door. Lingering there, the soldier tilted his head, studying it. "Check inside," he ordered. The human's stomach dropped. He looked around desperately, searching for escape. The shed had no windows, only a small gap in the back wall where wood had rotted through. It was narrow, but maybe just enough. He whispered quickly, "This way." He guided the girls toward the hole, his hands steady despite his racing heart. The older one understood. She pushed her sister through first, the younger girl sliding out into the rain-soaked weeds behind the shed. The door creaked suddenly. The human froze. The soldiers were opening it. "Go," he hissed to the older girl, shoving her toward the hole. She slipped through, vanishing into the storm. The human ducked low and squeezed out after them just as the door burst open. A beam of light cut through the shed, illuminating nothing but broken tools and shadows. "They were here," a soldier growled. "Find them." The human and the girls crawled through the mud behind the shed, rain pounding on their backs. He pulled them to their feet, whispering, "Run." They stumbled into the storm, their feet splashing through puddles. The streets ahead were narrow and twisting, lined with broken walls and sagging rooftops, perfect for hiding, but also easy to trap. Behind them, the soldiers shouted. Boots thundered through the rain. The chase had begun. The human led the girls down a side street, turning sharply into another alley. He glanced back. Shadows were following, lights flashing through the rain. He pushed the girls ahead, his voice firm. "Keep moving. Don't stop." The younger girl slipped, falling into a puddle. The human scooped her up without breaking stride. His arms ached, but he held her tight. The older one ran beside him, her breath ragged, her eyes wide with fear. They darted through another turn. The human spotted an old drainage tunnel ahead, half covered by vines and trash. He rushed toward it, shoving debris aside. He pushed the girls inside first, then crawled in after them. The tunnel was cold, wet, and smelled of rot, but it was hidden. The soldiers' voices echoed faintly outside. Closer now. Lights flashed past the tunnel entrance, one beam almost catching the younger girl's glowing eyes before she ducked deeper. The human pressed a hand against the wall, steadying himself. He whispered, "Stay low, don't move." The 3 of them crouched in silence, the storm covering their breaths. The soldiers searched, their voices growing angry. One shouted, "They can't be far." Another cursed, kicking at the trash near the tunnel. The human's muscles tensed, ready to shield the girls with his own body if they were discovered. But after what felt like forever, the voices moved away. the sound of boots fading into the storm. The girls clung to him, shaking violently. He wrapped his arms around them, whispering, "It's over. You're safe." Even though he wasn't sure. For now, they had escaped. But the human knew this was only the beginning. The soldiers would not stop. They would hunt until they found their prey. And as he looked into the terrified, glowing eyes of the girls, he made a silent promise. No matter the cost, he would not let them be taken back. The tunnel was damp and narrow. Water dripped from cracks above, forming small pools around their feet. The human leaned against the cold stone, catching his breath. His chest rose and fell heavily, but his eyes never left the two alien girls crouched in front of him. The younger one clung to her sister, her glowing eyes wide with fear. Her small frame shook not only from the cold but from exhaustion. The older girl kept her arms around her, though she trembled too. Her thin body looked ready to collapse, yet she fought to stay strong for her sibling. The human wiped the rain from his face. His shirt was soaked, clinging to his skin. He knew they could not stay in the tunnel forever. Soldiers might return. Dogs could sniff them out. Yet moving them now, in their weak state, could mean disaster. His stomach growled again, loud in the silence. He winced. He had nothing left to eat. No scraps, no bread, not even crumbs. He looked at the girls and knew they hadn't eaten enough either. The stew and bread had filled them for a moment, but their bodies needed more, much more. The younger girl looked up at him suddenly, her lips parted, her voice soft and broken. "Hungry," she whispered. The word cut through him like a knife. He clenched his jaw, frustration boiling inside. He wanted to tell her he would find food, that she didn't need to worry, but he had nothing to give. Not even hope tasted like enough right now. The older girl stroked her sister's hair, whispering something in their alien tongue, a lullaby perhaps. Her voice shook, but the rhythm carried warmth. The younger one slowly calmed, resting her head on her sister's shoulder. The human sat down opposite them. His body was heavy with fatigue. His mind raced through choices: steal food, beg, search the trash bins, risk going back to the main street. Each choice was dangerous, yet hunger gave no mercy. After a long silence, the older girl lifted her head, her glowing eyes fixed on him. "You leave," she said quietly. Her words were broken but clear enough. The human frowned. "What?" She swallowed, her voice shaking but firm. "Danger. Guards hunt us. You safe if go." Her meaning hit him hard. She was telling him to abandon them, to leave them to fend for themselves, so he wouldn't suffer their fate. He shook his head. Slowly, his voice steady. "No, I won't leave you." Her eyes widened slightly as if she had not expected that answer. She stared at him, searching his face for lies but found none. She looked away quickly, blinking hard. The younger one stirred, hearing only fragments, whispering, "Family," before slipping back into half-sleep. The human's throat tightened. He leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. "I've been alone too," he admitted, his voice low. "I know what it feels like to be forgotten, to be hungry, to be cold." He paused, his gaze softening. "I won't let you feel that again, not while I'm here." The older girl's lips parted, her voice trembled. "Why? We not human. We nothing to you." He felt anger rise, not at her, but at the cruelty of a world that made her believe such words. He leaned closer, his tone firm. "You are not nothing. Do you hear me? You are children. You deserve better. You deserve food, warmth, safety." The girl's eyes glistened, not quite tears, but something close. She nodded faintly, still uncertain, but touched by his voice. The human sat back, his decision heavy but unshakable. "Tomorrow I'll find food somehow," he promised. His voice carried weight, not just words, but a vow. "I don't know how yet, but I will." The older girl tilted her head, her eyes narrowing slightly. "Promise?" He met her gaze without flinching. "Promise." Silence filled the tunnel again, but it was a different kind of silence now. Not the silence of fear, but the silence of trust slowly forming. fragile, yet real. The rain outside slowed, turning into a steady drizzle. The human shifted to sit closer to the girls, not touching, but near enough to show he would not leave. The younger girl stirred, opening her glowing eyes halfway. She looked at him, her lips curving into the faintest smile, and whispered, "Safe," before drifting back into sleep. The human's chest ached. He had never been called that before. Not safe, not protector, never family. Yet in their eyes, in their trembling voices, he felt like he was something more than just a forgotten janitor. He leaned his head back against the stone, exhaustion washing over him. His body craved rest, but his mind stayed sharp. He listened for boots, for dogs, for danger, ready to shield the girls at a moment's notice. The older girl finally allowed her eyes to close. Still, she kept her sister in her arms, whispering one last word in her alien tongue. The human didn't understand it, but the tone was clear. Love, he looked at them both, curled together under his jacket, their breath steady, and he felt the weight of his vow settle deep in his heart. Hunger would not take them again. Fear would not rule them. He would find a way, no matter the cost, no matter the danger. And in that dark, wet tunnel, the human whispered to himself as though sealing the vow with the storm, "You are mine to protect now." The storm ended by morning. The sky above the city was gray and heavy. Puddles spread across the broken streets, and the air smelled of damp stone and smoke. The human stepped out of the drainage tunnel first. Scanning the street with tired eyes, his body ached from the night on cold stone, but his mind was fixed on one thing: food. Behind him, the two alien girls waited. Their glowing eyes watched him carefully, trusting him in silence. The younger leaned against her sister, still weak but smiling faintly. The older stood tall despite her thin frame, her hand holding her siblings tightly. "Stay here," the human whispered. "I'll be back." The older girl frowned, shaking her head. "Danger," she said, her voice sharp with worry. He crouched down to meet her eyes. His voice was calm but steady. "I promised, remember? I'll come back, I swear it." Her eyes searched his face, testing his words, then she nodded slowly, pulling her sister back into the shadows. The human gave them one last look before stepping into the street. The city was already awake. Merchants called out from stalls, peddling stale bread and boiled roots. Hungry men and women lined up for rations. The human moved carefully, keeping his head down. His pockets were nearly empty. He had barely enough coins to buy scraps, and not nearly enough to fill 3 mouths. He walked past a bakery, the smell of warm bread twisting his stomach. The baker glanced at him once, then turned away, saving smiles for wealthier customers. The human clenched his fists. He had been invisible his whole life, but today he carried more than himself. At the edge of the market, he spotted a cart piled with bruised fruit. Some rolled into the mud, ignored by buyers. He knelt and picked one up, wiping it clean on his shirt. The seller scowled but waved him off. "Take it, trash anyway." The human moved fast, gathering what he could. Bruised apples, broken bread crusts, a cracked jug with a little milk left inside. It wasn't much, but it was more than nothing. He traded the last of his coins for a sack of boiled grain, the kind most avoided, cheap but filling. When he returned to the tunnel, the girls looked up sharply. Their glowing eyes widened at the sight of the sack and the food in his arms. The younger girl gasped, stumbling forward. Her sister held her back at first, cautious, but the human smiled, holding out the bruised fruit. "It's not fancy," he said softly, "but it's food." The younger one snatched the apple, biting into it with a sound that was more relief than taste. Juice dripped down her chin and she laughed, a small, fragile laugh that cut straight through the heaviness in the tunnel. The older girl accepted a piece of bread slowly, still watching him, but when she bit into it, her shoulders dropped, tension easing at last. The human poured grain into an old tin bowl he found in the shed, mixing it with water and the last of the milk. He set it over a small fire he built from broken wood. The smell of warm porridge filled the space, and the girl sat close, eyes wide with wonder, as if it were a feast. They ate together, crouched around the small fire, sharing everything. The human stomach growled, but he waited until they had enough before taking his own share. Each bite was simple, plain, but to the girls it was life. For the first time, their cheeks carried color. Their eyes glowed not with fear, but with something brighter. Hope. The younger girl leaned against him, smiling with a mouth full of grain. She whispered, "Safe." Her small hand tugged at his sleeve, holding on as though afraid he might vanish. The older one finished her food and looked at him with serious eyes. "You stay?" she asked. Her voice was still broken, but the weight behind her words was clear. The human met her gaze. His voice was firm. "Yes, I stay." Her lips trembled, and for a moment she almost spoke. But instead she looked down, hiding her face. The younger laughed again, leaning closer to her sister, repeating the word she seemed to love most. "Family." The human froze. His chest tightened. The word carried warmth and pain all at once. For years he had lived alone, forgotten. But here, with two alien girls who had nothing, he felt something stir deep inside, something he thought was gone forever. He reached out and rested his hand gently on the older girl's shoulder. She stiffened at first, then slowly relaxed. Her glowing eyes lifted to his, shining with a trust so fragile he knew he could never betray it. "You're not alone anymore," he said quietly. "Not as long as I live." The promise hung in the air, stronger than the storm outside. Days passed. The human found ways to bring food, odd jobs, scraps from markets, even sharing what little he earned. Each meal was small, but together, they made it enough. The girls began to laugh more, to smile. Their fear softened, replaced by the comfort of knowing someone cared. The city outside still hunted, soldiers still searched. But in that small hidden place, a new life began, not built on fear but on trust. At night, the human watched them sleep under his jacket, their breaths even and calm. He thought of the word the younger one had spoken again and again, family. It no longer felt like a fragile dream. It felt real, alive, something worth fighting for. He whispered into the darkness, his voice steady. "No one will ignore you again, not while I breathe." And in that vow, more powerful than hunger, more powerful than fear, he fed not only their empty stomachs, but their empty hearts. For in the darkest alley of a city that had turned its back, one human had chosen to stay, to care, to fight. And that simple act had given two forgotten alien girls more than food. It had given them hope.